And we have here a very special guest, Don Eden. How you doing, Don?
Very well, thank you. It's an honor to be on the show.
It's great to have you here. And Don has been an author of a book called The Thrill of the Chaste. And it's a very special book that's directed for all the young adults in the world and college students. And but that's also a culmination of a long story, right? So
That's
you started
true.
off in the Jewish faith, right?
That's right. I'm a convert from Judaism, and one of the reasons why it's such an honor to be interviewed by you is because St.Maximilian Kolbe is one of the reasons, really one of the main reasons why I was drawn to the church. My parents split up when I was 5, and I was raised by my mother, and I didn't receive messages growing up about what marriage was for, why it was important to wait until marriage. And as a college student and in my 20s, I felt very lonely. I really wanted to be married, but living the kind of lifestyle that the media promotes, the media other than Franciscan media and some other good Catholic media. Yes, you are very different here. But living the lifestyle that the media promotes, that they say will bring love and marriage, it didn't bring it for me. And I also felt the emptiness, what C.S. Lewis calls the God-shaped vacuum. I first received faith in Jesus at the age of 31, after I was interviewing a rock musician on the phone. I used to be a rock journalist, and I thought I'd ask him a very intelligent question, a very intellectual question to show how smart I was, so I asked him what was he reading these days. And he was not a Christian musician, so I had no reason to be suspicious when he told me he was reading a book called The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. Wow. So I went and picked up this book having no idea that Chesterton was this great Christian writer.
Oh, wow.
And actually, I said that was when I was 31. My conversion was actually when I was 31, because I first heard of Chesterton at age 27, interviewing this musician. And so 4 years later, and after a lot more Chesterton, I received the grace of conversion. But at that time of my conversion, I believed that one didn't have to be Catholic to be a Christian. And while that's certainly true, the truth is, as I learned, that as a Christian, I really wanted to be close to the heart, and where the heart is the Sacred Heart, the church founded by Jesus. And how I came to understand that was through St. Maximilian. It actually happened while I was working at a newspaper and was in desperate need of a patron saint. Okay. I was really in trouble. In order to...
Is this for just to survive the environment, or?
Oh boy, to really survive, because I was in big trouble. After becoming a Christian, I was drawn more and more into being pro-life. Mm-hmm. And on my blog, The Dawn Patrol, I used to write regularly against Planned Parenthood. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I received large Catholic readership on my blog. And they would often, my Catholic readers would try to persuade me of the truth of the Catholic faith. And sometimes I would argue with them back and forth via emails or my blog. Sometimes they would try to give me more of the soft sell, just saying that they were available if I had questions. And that was more interesting to me. And okay. So I was helped by that. And at the same time, I was working for the New York Post, which is one of the tabloid newspapers in New York. It's owned by Rupert Murdoch, who's this Australian tabloid king. Some of your Australian friars might be familiar with him. I see a smile from Brother Augustine, who's off camera here. And so I had chosen to work for the New York Post because I was trying to get out of the dirty business of rock journalism and put myself in a safer place where I could be freer to be a Christian. And I thought working for a conservative paper, I'd be freer. But one day I was given a story to copy edit that was on how women with uterine cancer who were having so-called miracle babies through in vitro fertilization. And as I read the story, I got very angry because it was supposed to be this happy story, but it was really very offensive to me because in the process of in vitro fertilization, embryos are destroyed, and that's one of the reasons why it's not licit. And although I was not Catholic, I certainly was opposed to any destruction of human life. And in the story, it described how this one woman had 3 embryos implanted, 2 took, and now she has miracle babies. And I got so mad reading this because I thought, this isn't a happy story. There's a death there. One of these children died so this woman could have her twins. So I took it upon myself in anger, in a fit of pique, to change the story. Now the thing is, in my job as a copy editor, I had no right to change a reporter's words in that way. Okay. I was only supposed to read these, some of your friars who copy edit your publications probably know this. A copy editor's job is to correct for grammar and spelling, not to change the reporter's intention. So I changed the story so that where it said 3 embryos were implanted, 2 took, I added 1 died. And I took away the term miracle babies because it can't be a miracle if a baby died to make these miracle babies. And I even added an explanatory note saying that in the process of in vitro fertilization, embryos are routinely destroyed. Well, the story came out, and out of the hundreds of thousands of New York Post readers, only 2 noticed something wrong with it. One of them was the fertility doctor who was interviewed for what was supposed to be this happy, joyful story. And the other was the reporter who wanted my head on a platter. And so she called for my firing, and the boss, the copy chief, who was my boss, was shocked because I'd never before made changes without permission. So he initially wasn't going to fire me as long as I apologized to everyone involved, which I did. Don't worry, St.Maximilian is going to come into this story very soon. I can see my
Well, you're in journalism, so St.Maximilian Colby is a journalist. I can see.
Yes, yes, and this is where I needed a saint, because after I apologized to everyone involved, the reporter wasn't satisfied. She went online, found my blog where I was writing every day about the murders taking place at Planned Parenthood, and she also found an interview online that I'd given where I talked about what it was like being a Christian working in the media. And so she printed out my blog and this interview, gave them to the editors. Then the editors got really scared and they talked to my boss, and my boss took me aside and told me, Dawn, the editors are concerned that you're giving interviews where you say you're a Christian and you work at the New York Post. And they've asked me to ask you that if you give any more interviews where you say you're a Christian, don't tell them you work for the New York Post. And I asked him why, and he said, it's bad enough that readers in Manhattan think we're run by conservatives. We don't want them to think we're run by Christian conservatives. And at that point I thought, my days are really numbered. They're too scared here to have me continue working. They think that I'm just this radical with an agenda subverting them, so I'm going to be out of here. So it was at that point that I thought, I need a friend in heaven. And as a good Protestant, I thought to myself, Jesus is my friend in heaven. And I thought, I need another friend. I need Jesus with skin on. I need a friend who's been through what I'm going through and knows what it's like. And I actually asked a Catholic friend of mine who's the patron saint of journalists. And the friend said, St. Francis de Sales. And I went to the Oxford Book of Saints, and it said St. Francis de Sales was a nice man who collected art, and things like that. Whatever you'd read in a book written by Anglicans about Catholic saints, and And now I love St. Francis de Sales, but at that time I didn't see anything about him that got my mojo working, as I would have said as a rock journalist. Nothing that I could really connect with. And so I went online to the Patron Saints Index, and I looked for a patron saint of journalists, and I found that there was this saint of journalists who was also the patron saint of pro-lifers.
Okay.
And I thought, great, kill two birds with one stone. I only have to pray to one saint and get both benefits. Of course, now that I'm a Catholic, I pray to like 15 saints every day, but or something like that. But at this time, I saw this bio of St. Maximilian Kolbe, patron saint of journalists and pro-lifers,